What's happening YouTube? This is John nerding out with cards, and if you notice it's a little bit different, my surroundings, and that's because I'm back in California uh, for dry dock, and so it's back to work, right? Anyway, so before I left St. Louis, I did get some new additions to my Yadi Gold collection, but before I show those off, I wanted to kind of like ask a question, right? So it's, what is a player's, last card or last playing days card? And, you might think that that's kind of like a silly question, but you'll kind of see through these cards kind of like why I asked that, right? And now for years and years and years, it's the last year in which they played. Um, and that was always kind of molded in my mind because of a couple cards which I brought with me. And so the first is the 63 Musial. We obviously know that was the last year in which he played, but also there is not a 1964 Sam Musial card. And so like if you notice on the back here, it doesn't have his final stats, right? Because it only goes through 62 instead of showing 63. And another card that kind of solidified this in my mind, and it's kind of part of what molded my Ozzie Smith collection scope, but this 1996 Topps, right? So this is the last year which Ozzie played, of course, and you see that the stats only go through, well, if it decides not to be all blurry, but it only goes through 1995. There is not a 1997 Topps Ozzie Smith card. Now there are 1997 Ozzie Smith cards, just not made by Topps. And so, one of the more famous final stat cards is obviously the Roberto Clemente. But the circumstances for that were way different. These were announced retirements and not an unfortunate passing, which was also like during the off season. So I kind of think in my mind, they already had the card planned for the set. So again, like, why am I asking the question? Well, for my Yadier Molina Topps Gold run, obviously I have, I got the rookie already, but what's the scope of it, right? And so is it his playing days or is it all of them, right? And so I'm just gonna go ahead and show two right off the bat because it just kind of goes along with what I'm talking about. So 2022 was his last season. But in the 2023 Top set, he has a card. Obviously, I picked it up. You kind of see what decision I made, but this is also like $4. Obviously, like Pujols, he has a 2023 card as well. But interestingly enough, Adam Wainwright does not have a 2024 card, right? Because 2023 was his last season, and he does not have a 2024 card. So in my mind, it's like Topps has been inconsistent with when they stop producing cards of a player for the flagship set. And that's kind of why I asked the question. It's like, what is the last playing days card? I'm sure there's people that consider this one, 2023, Yadi's last one, whereas I consider 2022 his last one. And this is more of like a final stats card. Not really important in the grand scheme of things of the hobby, but kind of an interesting question in my mind, especially when you consider, I know a lot of people for retired players, they've they've transitioned to playing days cards, right? We heard Wade Boggs fan talk about how he's prioritizing playing days cards. And so, like, what does that mean? Does that mean that he stops the last season in which Wade Boggs played, like I do with my Ozzie Smith collection? Or does he include the final stat cards? I don't know. Everybody's collections are own. But kind of getting back to the pickups I got. So like I said, I got the 2022 and the 2023. And then in 2022, there was 2 more cards in which Yadi was featured on. And so there's the overarching battery. And I've got the base copy of this. And then I've also got that red foil one, numbered out of 199. So this is my 3rd variant of this card. And I'll show something peculiar about that one here in a little bit. And then in the update set, there was the Last Dance card where you got Wayno, Pujols, and Yadi. So I picked that up. But I don't know if it's gonna pick up on the camera is the battery card, the overarching battery. The gold is a lighter shade than his individual card and the Last Dance card. I thought that was kind of odd. Just something to kind of note. So one of the things is, you know, I showed like, you know, this postseason card. I am planning on getting all of Yadi's Topps Gold cards from 2004 to 2023 to include like team cards that he's on. So that's a total of 35 cards. I you know, wrote them all down a couple nights ago. But there's one extra card I wanted to get because I thought it was just really cool, and why not? Again, it was like a $4 or $5 card. So in the end, my Topps Gold run is going to be 36 cards. And then there's several collectors like Godlike Collectibles, Victor Negron. One of the things that they do is they collect Puerto Rican players. And then obviously we know Yadi's Puerto Rican. Well, that means so are his brothers. So, and then, you know, their dad was a Puerto Rican baseball player. He's in the Puerto Rican Hall of Fame. But I got this really, really cool 2005 Benji and Jose Molina card, which they shared a card that year. And I thought that was kind of neat. I don't know if y'all remember on Baseball Tonight when all 3 of them were active. All standout catchers, especially Benji Molina and Yadier Molina with their defense. But it was a Carl Ravitch, you know, and they would do you know, like highlights and stuff, and it was, you know, America's favorite game, name that Molina, you know, and it was either Yadi or Benji or Jose. But I thought that was kind of a neat little addition to include within my Yadi gold run. You know, similar to my Ken Boyer collection. I got a Cleve Boyer card, and I still need to get a Cloyd Boyer card. But yeah, so I've added, five of the 36 cards. And I don't know what my plan of attack is going to be. You know, do I, you know, because like I said, I got the rookie, and then do I start at the end and then, you know, visually do this? Do I start at the end and work my way back? I don't know. That's kind of how it's played out so far, because I got the 23 and the 22 cards. So that means, you know, what would be next? 21, 20, so forth and so on. But wanted to, you know, show those off. I haven't done a video in a while, of course. All that traveling and everything. I just wasn't in the mood. But again, you know, for like your collection, especially if you're a player collector, you know, what do you consider the last playing days card? You know, is it the final stats card, or is it the last year in which they played, similar to this Ozzy and similar to this Stan? So I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Ask a question, a hobby related question, show off some Yadi gold cards I got for that run that I'm doing. And I hope y'all enjoy it, and y'all have a good one.